All right, I think Zelos might have just created my perfect watch. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch, the budget watch collecting channel. My name's Dave, and this is a channel obviously about budget watch collecting, where I like to talk about all things related to watch collecting on a budget. And today we're going to be checking out a new offering from Zelos. I believe this one is just about to launch on their site. So Zelos, often their watches sell out very quickly. So when they send me something in for review, I like to try and rush a review out to get it out in time for you to actually consider buying the watch, because oftentimes by the time the reviews get posted, the watches are all sold out. Now I want to let you guys know this watch was given to me by Zelos for free to review, and I do get to keep it after the review is done. So I definitely appreciate that. However, they did not have any input into the content of this review, and as always, I will be giving you my complete and honest opinion of the watch. But keep all that in mind as we go through the rest of this. So this is a new addition from their Horizons line, which traditionally is a GMT watch that has a dedicated GMT hand, and typically it costs in, I believe, around the $700 to $800 range. Now what they've done with this version is they've done a less expensive edition of it. They've gotten rid of the GMT feature and just turned it into a normal three-hander with date. And they're offering it in 3 different flavors, one of which is a 12-hour bezel version, so kind of the poor man's GMT. And that's the version that I have here today. That was my favorite of the new editions that are coming out. They also have a version with a traditional dive time bezel, which basically makes it into kind of a 39 millimeter, very capable dive watch. And then they're coming out with a new field watch version, which is the most radical departure of the 3 editions. Completely new dial layout, fixed bezel, and yeah, just a really different look. But this one is one that I was particularly interested in because I just posted on my YouTube page a couple days ago a list of 14 things that really would make up like my perfect watch. If I could find a watch that has all 14 of these things, it would have everything that I would want out of a daily wear wristwatch. So what does that perfect watch look like for me? Well, really there's 4 main features that I use a watch for, and that is telling the time, telling the date, tracking a second time zone, and just having a timer on the watch. So a watch that has those 4 features are really the 4 main features that I use on a daily basis. And the last thing on that list was that it had to be under $500, and it's really hard to find a watch with all of those features under $500, especially to find a GMT watch under $500. This one kind of gets around that by taking the low-cost option for tracking a second time zone, which is by using a 12-hour bezel, which is my favorite kind of bezel for that reason. And I'll, when we get into the detail review, I'll show you guys why I like a 12-hour bezel so much. I think it offers a lot of functionality at a great price, and it's just an incredibly versatile bezel. Anyways, with all that said, let's go ahead and jump in and let me show you this watch and get a close look at it. So in typical Zelos fashion, you are also getting a nice wooden display box that you can use to keep all kinds of whatever watch-related accessories, and also a really nice leather watch roll. This one does not have an extra strap. Inside the watch roll, you get the watch and then a metal warranty card, good for a 1-year warranty on the watch. So Zelos, a lot of their watches are on the larger side, but this one is definitely one of their smaller ones. This one is a 39 millimeter diameter, which I'm really starting to warm up to this size. I used to prefer, 42 millimeter on sports watches, but a 39 millimeter on a bracelet I think wears really well on my 7.5 inch wrist, and so I really like the smaller size and the added comforts. Overall dimensions, so again, 39 millimeter diameter across. Lug to lug is 43 millimeters going this way, but you will note that this does have male end links, so the end links protrude past the watch. If you measure from the widest point with the bracelet on, you get about 49 millimeters across. It does have 20 millimeter lugs, so it's really easy to switch out to different straps, and this will wear with a pretty wide variety of straps. Thickness on the watch, including the slightly domed sapphire crystal, is only 12 millimeters. And that is due in large part to the Miyota 9015 movement that is inside of this watch. The Miyota 9015 is one of my favorite movements. It is thin, it is higher beat rate, so 28,000 beats per hour, so you get a very smooth 8 ticks per second sweep on the second hand, and is also fairly accurate, reliable, easy to service. Rated accuracy on the Miyota 9015, I believe, is negative 10 seconds a day to plus 30 seconds a day, so you should expect to get your watch within that range of accuracy when you get it. The only thing I don't like about the Miyota 9015 is that it can be a little bit noisy on the wrist. You can sometimes hear the rotor spinning and feel it. I haven't noticed it too much on this one, though. I think usually on kind of dive watches with really solid cases like this, it's a lot less noticeable than on something like a dress watch. But that said, let's go ahead and give you a little listen to it, and you guys can hear for yourself. Now, when I put it right up to the mic, you can probably hear it pretty well, but like I said, it's not really that noticeable on the wrist, less noticeable than some other watches that I've used with this movement in it. This watch comes in a bunch of different color and bezel options. I believe they're offering it basically in 3 main versions. This is the 12-hour bezel version. So this has kind of the poor man's GMT, a 12-hour bezel, which is my favorite. I love 12-hour bezels, probably my favorite bezel type. With the 12-hour bezel, this makes it kind of like a travel watch, and I think that's what the Horizons was originally intended for. The original Horizons was a GMT watch. This one does not have the GMT hand, so it's just a standard 3-hander with a 6 o'clock date. But with that 12-hour bezel, it does allow you to track a second time zone. Another great feature of this is that this is a bi-directional bezel, which is what you want for a GMT bezel. So you can rotate it either way. It is also 60-click, which again is pretty much exactly what you would want for a GMT bezel. It allows you to get it to track a second time zone very easily. If you travel a lot, you can very easily rotate this to match whichever time zone you want. So the way it works is, you line the 12 o'clock arrow up with the offset of the time you're going for. Basically, you just look up online, so what time it would be at 12 o'clock at your second time zone. In my case, I usually use this to keep track of time in California because that's where I'm from. I have a lot of family there. And I know that the offset from Japan is that in Japan, when it is 4 o'clock, it's 12 o'clock in California. So once I've got that lined up, I can just rotate that over to the 12 o'clock marker. And now when I'm reading the hours, so right now it's showing 3 o'clock in my local time, which would mean that it's 11 o'clock over in California. Of course, the downside to having a 12-hour bezel is you don't know if it's 11 o'clock a.m. or p.m. on the dial. You just have to know that off the top of your head. And I know that if it's 3 o'clock here in Japan, it's going to be 11 p.m. in California. Now, that said, a 12-hour bezel can just as easily be used as a timing bezel. It's really easy to do that if I line it up with the minutes. So in this case, you would use the minute hand to track the elapsed time. So you know that, if it's been, up until this point, you know that 35 minutes has gone by because, if you're reading a clock normally and you reach the 7 o'clock in the minute hand, it's 35, right? So everybody can pretty much tell the time on a clock. So it's very easy to use this as a timing bezel as well. So it serves as a dual purpose. And again, that's why it's my favorite kind of bezel. The travel theme continues to the case back. They've got a solid case back with a world map on it. So this is definitely, being marketed as a travel watch, and I think it would make a fantastic travel watch. You get something that is very sporty, very solidly built, solid movement, ability to track 2 time zones, 200 meters water resistance, and because of its size, it's very comfortable on the wrist as well. A couple of other cool features, particularly on the bracelet that they've done. This one does feature Zelos's new tool-free micro-adjust clasp. So you can use this clasp to adjust the watch throughout the day without using a tool. You just slide that lever and you can move the links in and out. And it is very fast to do so. So you can see right now, I've got it on my wrist and it's very loose. If I wanted to adjust that and tighten it throughout the day, that fast. And now I'm tighter. If you want to loosen it, it's pretty easy as well. You just take it off, pull that lever, and then which way is it? This way. Yeah. And then once it's all the way out, you can slide it in, slide it tighter without needing to click anything. So usually it's easiest to slide all the way out and then adjust it down to the clicks you want. Additionally, this also features quick release pins on the bracelet. So these are nice. They're kind of a newer thing. They're a little bit finicky. I've seen some watches where I've had problems with them. This one has been fine. It's been really easy to take it in and out, but some people like the quick release pins on the bracelet. Other people's don't, and you can take them out and swap them over to standard pins if you want to. It's a little bit of a trick to do that, but it is possible. Yeah. But I like that they went with the quick release. It does make it easier to do strap changes. The rest of the clasp, also great. Stainless steel, really nice milled clasp. Dual push button, and just a really beautiful clasp as well. Nice satin middle with sort of this cutout, polished, or with this sort of cutout brushed Zelos logo on it. So beautiful clasp, really comfortable, and just incredibly functional. That tool-free micro adjustment is one of my favorite features on watches. And if you have a dive watch that has that function, or a bracelet that has that function, it's really hard to go back to a watch that doesn't. You really get used to just always having the perfect size on your wrist. And when you go back to a standard bracelet where you can't adjust it as easily and you kind of got to settle for it either being too loose or too tight, you really get spoiled with these. And Zelos has one of the best ones that I've seen. So great option in this price range. We'll talk a little bit about the case design and finishing. The case design has a nice curve to it. It's got a couple of nice angles on it, so it's not like a flat slab on the side. It kind of has a really nice slim profile, and then you've got you've got alternating finishing on it. So you've got the top layer on the lugs here is kind of brushed in a radial pattern, which transitions nicely into bracelet. And then on the side of the case, you've got this bevel that actually runs across the entire length of the watch that's polished. Okay, so a lot of times it'll just be on, the lugs will be the only part that will have this. This actually runs along the entire side of the watch. And then under that, you have a strip of brushed. And then below on the bottom, as the case begins to go down to the case back, it slopes back down there and you get another polished surface. So really nice finishing there, which is really cool. And then you get a nice transition to the bracelet as well. On the inside of the lugs, I forgot to mention, inside of the lugs has also got a little bevel and polish. So that's another just touch of refinement there. But you get a nice smooth transition from the brushing on the top of the lugs into the brushing on the bracelet. The top of the bracelet is brushed, but you'll notice that there is a little polish section here as well, which again kind of flows directly into that polished edge on the case of the watch. So you get a really smooth, seamless transition between the two. Just a really great attention to detail that you see on this particular model from Zelos. And they're really, I think, getting better with those little details, and it's fun to see that. The crown is signed. It is perfectly sized. It's a little bit oversized for a watch this size, but it makes it very easy to use, very easy to wind and set the time. Miyota 9015 does have quick set date, obviously. So, pretty full-featured movement. Obviously hacking as well, hacking, hand winding. So yeah, everything you would need out of a good standard movement. All right, let's talk a little bit about the dial and the indices that they've got. So this is the kind of frost version where it is a white, fully lumed dial. So the dial is white in daylight or under light. It glows blue. I believe this is a BGW9 coated dial, so it glows a pretty solid blue in the dark. However, the indices and the hands are C3, so those glow green, so you get this kind of two-color lume. And then the bezel is also BGW9, so blue glowing bezel in the dark, fully lume bezel. Which, yeah, we'll get to some lume shots in a minute. But even in the daylight, this is a really great color scheme. It reminds me a lot of the Rolex Explorer 2, the polar version, and I think they've kind of done a good job of taking some of the good aspects of that. One challenge that I see a lot on white dial dive watches is that there is not a lot of contrast between the markers and the dial. If you use silver, just normal stainless steel, silver colored markers and hands, the reflections can make it a little bit difficult to see. They've gone with kind of a black version. I don't know exactly what they've done to make it sort of a black metal, whether it's like a DLC coating or just a different alloy or what, but they are applied and they are metallic, but it is a dark black that gives you a lot of contrast against the white dial. So this is very easy to read in any lighting environment. And that goes for the hands and the markers as well. So I love, especially the markers, seeing that black outline around them and the black outline around the hands against that white dial. Just looks great. And then that little orange second hand, a little bit of orange text on the 200-meter markings on the dial gives a little pop of color. And yeah, just really, really great look there. The dial is also textured. You can't really see it on the fully loomed version. So there's other dial variants there where the texturing is much more noticeable. I believe that, because it's covered in that layer of lume, that sort of softens the effect, and you don't normally notice it. You can kind of see this sort of radial pattern when you turn out the lights and the lume backs it, but for the most part, you don't notice the texturing unless you look closely. But it is appreciated then when you do look closely and see it there. Now, one thing I will note about the colors is I think I would have preferred if they would have had a contrasting color for the bezel. For me, this is kind of a lot of white when you have the white dial and the white bezel. That's kind of going to be a personal preference, and it's cool that they give you that fully lume bezel with it. But on the original Zelos Horizons, where it was a GMT watch, you had two-tone bezel. So, they would kind of be like a Pepsi style or something, where half of it would be one color and half of it would be the other. I feel like even on a 12-hour, that would still look just aesthetically better, or even better just having a solid, blue or black or some kind of a, different, or even like, I think like a stainless steel bezel would have been great as this as well. Just give a little bit of contrast. For me, this is kind of a lot of white with the dial and the bezel both being white like that. But again, that's going to be kind of a personal preference thing. The lume on this Zelos Horizons is absolutely fantastic. You're going to see in a second here the Lume Comparison versus some other watches, but it scored really well. And you can see just how brightly it glows here, even in this kind of dim lighting. You can see also that just great contrast between the blue and the green, really kind of cool effect at night. Now, I will say that for me, a fully loomed dial and bezel is actually a little bit more difficult to read once it gets dim because there's less contrast. Obviously, if there was just a black face with green, glowing parts, it would be easy to pick out those green hands and markers against a black background. But with the blue background also adding some glow, as the night gets on, it does become a little bit more difficult to read. So it's kind of a trade-off between it looking really cool like this versus having full, maximal functionality with, getting a more contrast and having, it's weird. Like the less things that are glowing, the more contrast you're going to get, and the actual functionality increases. But as far as cool factor goes, this is pretty awesome, and it still glows bright enough that you're usually not going to have any problem reading the watch in the dark. All right, let's check out how it did against some other watches in my collection. Okay, so on this 2-hour lume comparison, I decided to put this up against my Seiko Samurai, the previous Zelos watch that I had in, the Zelos Swordfish Titanium, and then there, number 3 on the list, you're going to see the Zelos Horizons, which is this watch that we're reviewing. And because it has a fully loomed dial, I want to put it up against one other watch in my collection that has a fully loomed dial. I've got the Laco Casablanca, which has excellent lume as well, and I want to see how the dial lume compares between those two in particular. And then finally, I have the new Argon Die Master 42mm. And as you can see, the Zelos completely blew everything else out of the water on all 3 metrics. It came in first place on hand brightness, first place on marker brightness, and first place on dial brightness. Now, I did not put the Axios Ironclad in this comparison. I didn't think the Zelos was actually going to perform as well as it did. So I would be really curious to compare those two together. And I'm planning this sort of lume battle video that I'm working on trying to come up with. And so when I do get around to that, I will be putting these two watches up against each other, and we'll be able to see then which one comes out on top. But all that to say, the Zelos Horizons does have some pretty spectacular lume on there. Okay, so I've told you why I like this watch. A lot of the reasons why I like this are going to be more personal to me. I need that ability to track a second time zone. I kind of have a thing for 12-hour bezels. So this is something that really hit well with me. But what about the rest of you guys out there? What do I think are the main strengths and weaknesses of this watch for a normal person who might not have those same specific requirements that I have? I think one, you're getting everything that Zelos offers. This is just a really well-finished watch, really well built, and they continue to hone and refine their design. Another thing it's got going for it, this is just a great size watch. So Zelos, they typically make larger watches, and more people are looking for smaller watches. So even if you're just looking for like a 39mm dive watch, this is one of the only ways you're going to get a Zelos dive watch in that size. So if you just want kind of a slimmer, smaller, easy to wear dive watch, or if you have smaller wrists, this is going to be a great one for you to look at. Okay, but what are some of the downsides? What are some of the things that could be improved? I don't have a lot to put on this side. One of the only things that I had a minor complaint about is that the bezel action is a little bit stiff. It's kind of hard to grip and turn sometimes because of the force required. It's very good bezel action. It's very solid. No backplay, which is great, but I would like it to be a little bit easier to get a grip on and turn it. The other thing is that while I think this is a good value, it's not as amazing a value as some of the other Zelos watches that I've seen. In this case, I believe the launch price for this one is going to be around $450, between $450 and $500, which is a good price for this, especially a watch this slim with these specs. You're getting the Miyota 9015 movement inside of it, which is a higher end movement than was in the Swordfish. You're getting better lume and maybe a little bit better finishing as well. But a lot of those things are things that you would normally expect from a micro brand dive watch in this price range. But all that said, it's hard to call a good price a negative just because it's not as amazing a price as some of their other offerings. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Hopefully this review hits you guys in time that you can check this out and get a chance at jumping on it at their early bird prices. So the way Zelos does their sales is they always release their watches on their site, and I think for like the first month they're at a discounted rate, so you get a pretty good discount, and then but often they'll sell out before the discount period is over. So you kind of got to jump on it if you see something you like to get it at the best price. But that will about wrap it up for today. Please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of this particular Zelos, how this one kind of ranks in your order of Zelos watches that you have seen, if you have gotten Zelos watches before. But until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.